The wedding contract sat on the mahogany desk like a death sentence, and Katherine Davies stared at it with the kind of numbness that comes from having your entire future decided without your input. Her father stood by the window of his study, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders rigid with the weight of decisions already made. "The Aldridges are a good family, Katherine. Marcus is educated, responsible, and his family's real estate empire is second to none. This merger will secure both families' futures." Katherine felt her throat tighten. "I'm 24 years old, Dad. This is insane. People don't arrange marriages anymore. People with our level of responsibility do." Her father turned, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. Their own family business, a chain of luxury hotels, was struggling after years of mismanagement by her late uncle. This arrangement wasn't just about tradition, it was about survival. "You'll meet him next week. Give him a chance. That's all I ask." She wanted to scream, to throw something, to run. Instead, she nodded, because what choice did she have? Her mother had died when she was 16, and her father had spent every day since then working himself to the bone to keep their legacy alive. How could she be the one to let it all crumble? The restaurant her father chose for the first meeting was predictably elegant, all soft lighting and hushed conversations. Katherine arrived early, wearing a navy dress that felt like armor. She ordered water and tried to steady her breathing, imagining the stranger who would walk through that door. Would he be arrogant, cold? Would he look at her like a business transaction? When Marcus Aldridge finally appeared, her first thought was that he looked tired. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair and sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't set in such a grim expression. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, but he tugged at the collar like it was strangling him. "Katherine." His voice was deep, cautious. "That's me." She managed a weak smile. The reluctant bride. Something flickered in his dark eyes, not amusement exactly, but maybe recognition. He sat down across from her and loosened his tie slightly. Marcus, the equally reluctant groom. For a moment they just looked at each other, two people trapped in the same gilded cage. Then Katherine laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised them both. "This is completely ridiculous." "It really is," Marcus agreed. He picked up the menu, scanned it without really seeing it, then set it back down. "For what it's worth, this wasn't my idea either. My grandmother is the one pushing this. She's got old-fashioned ideas about family alliances." "My father thinks it'll save our business," Katherine said quietly. "We're drowning in debt." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "I know, I'm sorry. That must be difficult." They ordered food neither of them wanted and made stilted conversation about safe topics like weather and favorite books. Katherine learned that Marcus ran the acquisition division of his family's company, that he'd studied architecture before being pulled into the family business, and that he had a younger sister who thought the whole arrangement was medieval. Marcus learned that Katherine had a degree in hospitality management, that she loved old movies, and that she'd been working in their family's flagship hotel in New York before this bomb had dropped on her life. By the end of dinner, they'd established a fragile truce. They weren't excited about the arrangement, but they weren't enemies either. Just two people trying to make the best of an impossible situation. "So," Marcus said as they stood outside the restaurant, the city lights glittering around them, "I suppose we should try to get to know each other before the wedding, make this less awkward." "When is it supposed to be?" Katherine asked, though she dreaded the answer. 3 months. My grandmother doesn't believe in long engagements." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfectly styled dark strands. "Look, I know this isn't fair to you, it's not fair to either of us, but maybe we can be friends at least, make it bearable, friends." It wasn't love, wasn't romance, wasn't anything close to what she'd dreamed about as a little girl, but it was something. She nodded. "Okay, friends." Over the next few weeks, they fell into an odd rhythm. Marcus would text her in the mornings, usually something mundane about his schedule or asking if she wanted to grab coffee. They'd meet for lunch or dinner, sometimes at fancy restaurants that their families approved of, sometimes at little hole-in-the-wall places where no one knew their names. They talked about everything except the wedding, as if by ignoring it, they could pretend it wasn't looming over them like a storm cloud. Katherine started to notice little things about him. The way he always held doors open, not just for her but for everyone. How he remembered her coffee order after she'd mentioned it once. The fact that he called his sister every Sunday without fail, and the way his whole demeanor softened when he talked about her. Marcus was kind, she realized. Genuinely kind in a way that couldn't be faked. One evening, about 6 weeks before the wedding, they ended up at a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. It was pouring rain, and they'd both gotten soaked running from the subway. Katherine's carefully styled hair was plastered to her head, and Marcus's expensive suit was dripping onto the worn linoleum floor. "We look like drowned rats," Katherine said, laughing as she tried to wring out her hair. Marcus grinned, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Speak for yourself. I think I pull off the drowned rat look quite well." The elderly woman who owned the restaurant took pity on them, bringing towels and seating them at a corner table near the kitchen where it was warm. They ordered pasta and wine, and somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, the conversation shifted. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, his voice quieter than usual. "What did you want before all this? What were your plans?" Katherine twirled her fork through her spaghetti, considering. No one had asked her that in months. "I wanted to modernize our hotels, make them more sustainable, more connected to the local communities. My father thought it was too risky, too expensive, but I had this whole vision." She felt her cheeks heat. "It probably sounds stupid." "It doesn't," Marcus said firmly. "It sounds passionate, that's rare." "What about you?" she asked. "What did you want?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his wine glass. "I wanted to design buildings. Real architecture, not just buying and selling properties. I wanted to create something beautiful." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "My father said that was a hobby, not a career, not for an Aldridge." "That's not fair," Katherine said, feeling a surge of anger on his behalf. "You should be able to choose your own life." "So should you," Marcus replied, meeting her eyes. The moment stretched between them, heavy with all the things they couldn't say, all the choices that had been taken from them. When Marcus walked her home that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glittering. They walked slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. At her building's entrance, Marcus hesitated. "Katherine, I know this isn't what either of us planned, but I'm glad it's you. If I have to marry someone I barely know, I'm glad it's someone I actually like." Her heart did a strange flip in her chest. "I'm glad it's you too," she admitted softly. He reached out and tucked a strand of still damp hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, and she realized with a start that she wanted him to. But he just smiled, squeezed her hand, and walked away into the night. After that evening, something shifted between them. The texts became more frequent, more personal. Marcus started showing up at the hotel where she worked, bringing her lunch and staying to listen to her ideas about renovation. Katherine went to his office once and saw the sketches hidden in his desk drawer, beautiful drawings of buildings that would never be built, and her heart ached for him. They started spending time together beyond the obligatory dates. Marcus took her to an architecture exhibit at a museum, and she watched his face light up as he explained the different styles and techniques. Katherine dragged him to a classic film screening, and he pretended to complain but held her hand in the dark theater when the movie got sad. The wedding preparations continued around them, a machine set in motion that couldn't be stopped. Katherine tried on dresses, approved flower arrangements, and smiled for engagement photos, all while trying to figure out what she was feeling. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a sacrifice for her family. So why did her stomach flutter when Marcus smiled at her? Why did she find herself looking forward to seeing him every day? 8 days before the wedding, Katherine's father had a heart attack. It was mild, the doctors assured her, but it was a warning. He needed to reduce his stress to step back from the business. As Katherine sat beside his hospital bed, holding his weathered hand, she felt the full weight of their situation crash down on her. "I'm sorry," her father whispered, his voice weak. "I'm so sorry, Katie, I never should have asked this of you." "Don't," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Don't apologize, you were trying to protect our family." "But I didn't protect you," he said. "I sacrificed your happiness for a business. What kind of father does that?" Katherine wanted to tell him it was okay, that she understood, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just held his hand and cried. Marcus came to the hospital as soon as he heard. He brought flowers for her father and coffee for Katherine, and he sat with her in the uncomfortable plastic chairs without saying a word. Finally, when visiting hours were over and they were alone in the waiting room, he spoke. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "The wedding, if you want to call it off, I'll support you. I'll figure out another way to help your family." Katherine looked at him, really looked at him. Somewhere along the way, this stranger had become the person she trusted most in the world. He was good and kind, and he made her laugh even on her worst days. And God help her, she'd fallen in love with him. "You want to call it off?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I want you to be happy, that's all I've ever wanted." "That's not what I asked." He stood up, pacing the small waiting room like a caged animal. "You want honesty? Fine. No, I don't want to call it off. I know this started as an arrangement, as something forced on both of us. But Katherine, you've become the best part of my day. I wake up thinking about you. I make up excuses to see you. When something good or bad happens, you're the first person I want to tell." He stopped, turning to face her. "I'm in love with you. I think I have been for weeks, and I have no idea what to do about it because I don't want to trap you in a marriage you don't want." Katherine's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She stood up, crossed the distance between them, and kissed him. It was clumsy at first, awkward with nerves and pent-up emotion, but then Marcus's arms came around her and it became something else entirely. It became right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Katherine was crying again, but this time from relief. "I love you too," she said. "I didn't want to admit it because this whole situation is so messed up, but I do. I love you." Marcus laughed, pressing his forehead against hers. "So we're two idiots who fell in love in an arranged marriage." "Looks that way," Katherine said, smiling through her tears. "Then let's do this right," Marcus said. He pulled back and got down on one knee, right there in the hospital waiting room with its flickering fluorescent lights and smell of antiseptic. He didn't have a ring, but he took her hand in both of his. "Katherine Davies, I know we're already scheduled to get married in 8 days. But I'm asking you now, not because of our families or business or any of that. Will you marry me because you want to? Because you love me the way I love you?" "Yes," Katherine said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, absolutely yes." The wedding itself was a blur. Katherine's father was released from the hospital 2 days before with strict instructions to rest, but he insisted on walking her down the aisle. As she took his arm in the small church filled with both families, he whispered, "I saw the way he looks at you. That young man adores you." "I adore him too," Katherine whispered back, and she meant it with her whole heart. When she reached the altar and saw Marcus waiting for her, looking impossibly handsome in his tuxedo and impossibly nervous, her doubts vanished completely. This was right. This was exactly where she was supposed to be. The ceremony was traditional, but when it came time for the vows, they'd written their own. Marcus went first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Katherine, when this arrangement was first proposed, I thought my life was ending. I thought I was giving up any chance at real happiness, but you proved me wrong in every possible way. You're brilliant and brave and beautiful, and you make me want to be better. I promise to support your dreams, to be your partner in every sense of the word, and to love you more fiercely every day for the rest of my life." Katherine's hands were shaking as she began her vows. "Marcus, I spent so long being angry about this arrangement that I almost missed the incredible gift it gave me. It gave me you. You showed me that kindness isn't weakness, that strength can be gentle, and that love can grow in the most unexpected places. I promise to stand beside you, to fight for your dreams as fiercely as you fight for mine, and to choose you every single day, now and always." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed her like a man who'd been waiting his whole life for this moment, and Katherine kissed him back the same way. The reception was elegant, with champagne and dancing and speeches from family members who still thought this was purely a business arrangement. Marcus's sister, Melissa, caught Katherine alone by the dessert table. "I owe you an apology," Melissa said. She was 21, with the same dark hair as her brother but warmer eyes. "I was so angry about this whole thing. I thought my family was being barbaric, forcing Marcus into marriage. But I've watched you two together tonight, and that's not an arranged marriage. That's real." Katherine smiled. "It started arranged, but somewhere along the way it became very real. He's happy," Melissa said softly. "I haven't seen him this happy in years, maybe ever. Thank you for that." "He makes me happy too," Katherine said. "Your brother is pretty special." Later, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Marcus pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "I have a wedding present for you." "We agreed no gifts," Katherine said, but she was smiling. "Too bad, I got you one anyway." He spun her gently. "I talked to your father and the board of your hotel company. They've agreed to let you lead the modernization initiative you wanted. Full creative control, reasonable budget." Katherine stopped dancing, staring up at him in shock. "Marcus, that's huge. How did you even do that?" "I may have offered some financial backing from Aldridge Real Estate, and I may have put together a very compelling presentation about why your ideas are sound business strategy." He grinned. "I've been working on it for 3 weeks." "I can't believe you did that," she said, feeling tears prick at her eyes again. She'd cried more in the past week than she had in years. "Believe it," Marcus said. "I told you I'd fight for your dreams." "I got you something too," Katherine admitted. "I talked to your father. Aldridge Real Estate is branching into architectural design. You're going to head the new division." Marcus's eyes went wide. "What? How?" "Your sister helped," Katherine confessed. "We showed him your sketches. Marcus, they're incredible. Your father was genuinely impressed. He just never knew you were that serious about it." For a moment, Marcus just stood there, looking stunned. Then he picked Katherine up and spun her around, both of them laughing like idiots in the middle of the dance floor. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, wandering through ancient cities and eating too much pasta, and making love in hotel rooms with views of the Mediterranean. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's quirks and habits. Marcus snored lightly when he slept on his back. Katherine was grumpy before her first coffee. He loved jazz music. She couldn't cook to save her life. He was a morning person. She preferred late nights. One evening, they sat on a balcony in Rome watching the sunset paint the city gold and orange. Katherine was tucked against Marcus's side, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "about how different our lives could have been. If we'd refused the arrangement, if we'd fought harder. Regrets?" Katherine asked, though she knew the answer. "Not even close," he said firmly. "I just keep thinking about all the things that had to go right for us to end up here. If my grandmother hadn't been so stubborn, if your father hadn't needed help, if we hadn't both decided to give each other a chance. Any one thing could have gone differently, and I wouldn't have found you." Katherine turned to look at him, the man who had started as a stranger and become her everything. "I don't believe in fate or destiny or any of that, but I believe we made this. We chose each other even when we didn't have to. That's better than fate." "Much better," Marcus agreed, kissing her softly. "I choose you, Katherine Aldridge." She smiled against his lips. "I choose you too." They returned from their honeymoon to dive into their respective projects. Katherine threw herself into the hotel modernization, working with architects and sustainability experts to bring her vision to life. It was exhausting and frustrating and absolutely exhilarating. Marcus started his architecture division, spending long hours at his drafting table, designing buildings that would actually be built. Some nights they'd both come home too tired to do anything but collapse on the couch together, but they were happy, pursuing their passions and supporting each other. 6 months into their marriage, Katherine's father threw a dinner party to celebrate the success of the hotel's first renovated property. The grand reopening had been a massive success, with bookings through the roof and rave reviews from critics. As Katherine stood in the redesigned lobby, she felt a sense of pride she'd never experienced before. This was hers. She'd built this. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Proud of you," he murmured. "Couldn't have done it without you," she said, leaning back against his chest. "Yes, you could have," Marcus corrected, "but I'm glad I got to be here for it." At the dinner, Katherine's father stood to make a toast. He looked healthier than he had in years, the stress of the failing business finally lifted. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This project, this success, it's all Katherine's doing. But I also want to acknowledge that I made a terrible mistake months ago. I forced my daughter into an arrangement that prioritized business over her happiness, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "What I didn't count on was that my daughter is smarter and stronger than I ever gave her credit for. She took an impossible situation and turned it into something beautiful. Katherine, Marcus, watching you two together has restored my faith in love. I'm sorry for how this started, but I'm so grateful for where it ended up." Katherine was crying again, standing to hug her father. Marcus joined them, and for a moment they all just held each other, grateful for second chances and unexpected happiness. A year into their marriage, Marcus finished his first major architectural project, a community center in a low-income neighborhood designed to be beautiful and functional and sustainable. Katherine was with him at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, watching his face glow with pride and accomplishment. This was what he was meant to do, she thought. This was who he was supposed to be. That night, as they celebrated with champagne in their apartment, Katherine had something important to tell him. She'd been nervous about it all day, unsure how he'd react. "So," she said, settling onto the couch next to him. "I have news." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. I hope." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The champagne glass slipped from Marcus's hand and he barely caught it before it spilled everywhere. "What?" "Are you serious?" "Very serious," Katherine said, watching his face carefully. "I took 3 tests this morning. Are you happy?" Instead of answering, Marcus kissed her, deep and long and full of so much love it made her dizzy. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "I'm more than happy. I'm ecstatic. We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Katherine repeated, and suddenly it felt real, terrifying and wonderful and real. The pregnancy was relatively smooth, though Katherine spent the first trimester constantly nauseous and the 3rd trimester constantly uncomfortable. Marcus was attentive and patient, bringing her ginger tea and rubbing her swollen feet without complaint. They set up a nursery together, painting the walls a soft yellow and assembling furniture while arguing good-naturedly about parenting philosophies they knew nothing about. Their daughter was born on a snowy February evening, arriving 3 weeks early and screaming her displeasure at the world. Marcus held Katherine's hand through the whole labor, and when the doctors placed their daughter in Katherine's arms, they both cried. "She's perfect," Marcus whispered, touching one tiny fist with his finger. "She really is," Katherine agreed, exhausted and elated and more in love than she'd thought possible. They named her Maya after Katherine's mother, and she became the center of their universe. Marcus was an incredible father, patient and gentle and surprisingly good at changing diapers. Katherine watched him walk the floors at 3 in the morning with Meyer against his shoulder, singing off key lullabies, and fell in love with him all over again. As Maya grew, so did their family. Not with more children right away, though they both wanted that eventually, but with the bonds they built. Katherine's father was a devoted grandfather, spoiling Maya shamelessly. Melissa became Maya's favorite aunt, babysitting whenever they needed a night out. Even Marcus's initially stern father softened around his granddaughter, letting her pull on his tie and teaching her to say "Papa" before she could say much else. 2 years after Maya was born, Katherine stood in the lobby of their newest hotel property, this one built from the ground up with sustainability at its core. Marcus had designed it, his first hospitality project, and it was stunning. Clean lines and natural light, with gardens on every floor and solar panels on the roof. It was everything they'd both dreamed of, a perfect blend of their visions. Marcus came to stand beside her, Maya perched on his hip. Their daughter was 2 now, with Katherine's blonde hair and Marcus's dark eyes, and she was pointing at everything, demanding to know what it all was. "Building," she declared, and Marcus laughed. "That's right, sweetheart, Daddy's building." "Mommy's too," Katherine corrected, tickling Maya's stomach. "It's both of ours." "Ours," Maya repeated seriously, and they both smiled. That evening, after Maya was asleep and they were curled up together on their couch, Marcus said, "Do you ever think about how we started?" "How angry we both were." "Sometimes," Katherine admitted. "It feels like a different life, like that was 2 completely different people." "In a way it was," Marcus said thoughtfully. "We're not who we were back then, we've grown together." "Do you think we would have found each other if not for the arrangement?" Katherine asked. It was a question she'd wondered about more than once. Marcus considered it. "I don't know, maybe, but probably not. We moved in different circles, had different lives. The arrangement brought us together, but we're the ones who chose to fall in love. That's the part that matters." "I'm glad we did," Katherine said softly. "Choose to fall in love, I mean. I can't imagine my life without you." "You'll never have to," Marcus promised, kissing her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." 5 years into their marriage, on their anniversary, Marcus took Katherine back to the little Italian restaurant in Brooklyn where everything had changed. It looked exactly the same, still warm and worn and welcoming. The elderly owner remembered them and seated them at the same corner table with a knowing smile. Over pasta and wine, they reminisced about their journey. The awkward first dates, the moment they'd admitted their feelings, the wedding that had been both arranged and chosen. They talked about Maya and their work and their plans for the future. They wanted another baby, maybe 2. They wanted to travel more to show Maya the world. They wanted to keep building both businesses and buildings, creating things that would last. "I have something for you," Marcus said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a ring, a simple band with a single diamond. "Marcus, we're already married," Katherine said, laughing even as her eyes filled with tears. "I know," he said, "but when I proposed the first time, I didn't have a ring. I've been carrying this for months, waiting for the right moment. Katherine, you're my best friend, my partner, the love of my life, and the mother of my child. Will you accept this ring as a promise that I'll love you forever?" "Forever is a long time," Katherine said, but she was already holding out her hand. "Not long enough," Marcus replied, sliding the ring onto her finger. They kissed across the table, tasting wine and tomato sauce and 7 years of shared history. When they pulled apart, Katherine was smiling through happy tears. "To arranged marriages that become love stories," she said, raising her glass. "To strangers who become soulmates," Marcus added, clinking his glass against hers. They drank to their past, their present, and their future, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. What had started as an obligation had become the greatest gift of their lives. They'd been forced together by circumstance, but they'd chosen to stay by love. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.